Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day. And I do hope everyone's having a great week out there so far. Wanted to jump on here and give you guys some updated information on Tropical Storm Erin. Erin is still forecast to become a powerful hurricane. So the first thing we'll go over is how it's doing out here in the Atlantic this evening. We'll check in on it. We'll go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll compare all model guidance, and then we'll geek out with you guys once again, discuss the environmental background of the Atlantic, how it will eventually support what I think is going to be rapid intensification of Erin at some point over the next several days. And then we'll speak on steering currents. Very complex setup. It's going to be tough to explain, but of course it's always a challenge accepted kind of deal with me. Would explain things to you guys as the public in a way where you folks can understand. That's always a huge goal of me with this channel. I don't just want to jump on here, show you flashy model guidance and provide absolutely no information behind it. I don't like doing that at all. So that's why my videos are very long, drawn out. And yeah, if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below, asking for prayers. I can make it through this video. I am physically, mentally exhausted. Did two soccer practices in a row this evening, and yeah, I had to dig deep for this one. So here we go. So latest conditions, well, current conditions with Erin out here in the Atlantic. It is now closer to the Lesser Antilles than it is Africa. So this thing is booking it at around 20-ish miles per hour. It's much more healthy tonight compared to last night, and this is indicated by the colder cloud tops you see with this system. And let's circle this actually so you actually know where it is on your screen instead of just putting a cursor over it. This is it right here in Erin. So you see the blacks and the whites embedded in the blacks. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have some pretty strong convection, shower, and storm activity with this system. And the stronger it is, the taller these updrafts, the taller up they get in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the colder it gets. And this is reflected by the colors you see on your screen with colder cloud tops. So just want to continue to go over that, because I think we'll see a fantastic example of that when this does eventually become a hurricane, and most likely a major hurricane at some point over the next several days. But I mean, there's a pretty good example of it right now, and this thing's a pretty healthy tropical storm, and it's in the process of strengthening at a very slow pace this evening here in the central Atlantic. So we'll get that back off your screen. We'll continue to move forward. The latest from the National Hurricane Center. We do have the latest information from 8 p.m. This is a 1,001 millibar low, so getting very close to a sub 1,000 millibar storm. It's a 50 mile per hour system and moving now below 20 miles per hour at about 17 miles per hour, and it's moving west. And I do think the upper level currents will begin to gradually continue to slow down. So I do think the forward progress of this system will gradually slow down. So it might get below 15 miles per hour at some point. So we'll see what happens. But it's the latest with the system getting stronger this evening for sure. And here it is out here in the Atlantic. The sun has set, obviously, for a lot of folks across the lower 48 and definitely out here in the Atlantic. And so they're forecasting this become a hurricane sometime tomorrow night about 2 a.m. And then maybe a Category 2 hurricane, 100 mile per hour storm by 2 a.m. Saturday. And forecast to become a major Category 3 hurricane by around Sunday afternoon, so the later portion of this coming weekend. And peak intensity winds are now all the way up to 120 miles per hour. So I do think this will become at least a Category 4. I think it'll go past a Category 3. Category 5, not sure, but I definitely will not say it's not possible. That's for sure. I think that the environment will favor a very, very strong hurricane. So one thing you'll notice here is the northern Leeward Islands are no longer in this cone. That doesn't mean that this cone can't potentially shift back south. The British Virgin Islands no longer in the cone. Puerto Rico, but this is very close to the Turks Caicos Islands, the cone is, and I think that this still sort of the future edge, the most further out portion of this cone could shift a little bit further south and maybe west in time, and I'll talk about why here in a second. So that second is now. Let's go over the latest European model. So this had everybody on social media definitely going this afternoon, and rightfully so. So what we're going to do here is first off start with the Euro, and this is for Saturday morning, August the 16th. So here in the next few days, and the Euro thinks this is going to be around a 992 millibar low just north or northeast of the Leeward Islands. So it's obviously strengthened a little bit at this point. And as it gets into this area, the Euro now wants this to sort of strengthen at a slower pace, kind of at a moderate pace compared to maybe some earlier runs. So now it's a 980 millibar low, which would probably be a category 1, maybe low end category 2 hurricane, well north of the British Virgin Islands at this point. And as we start to get into, say, Sunday evening, I think that this could be flirting with a major hurricane. Anytime we say major hurricane, we mean category 3 or higher, but around a 973 storm. And then it begins to turn not necessarily due north, but certainly more of northwest. And if I do forget to mention any times or days or things like that, it's right here on the top of your screen. TUE stands for Tuesday, August the 19th. So this is actually Monday evening Zulu time. But we get into Tuesday morning, and this deepens to a sub 970 millibar hurricane. So probably dealing with a major hurricane at this point. We got the Bahamas right here. I mean, it's almost close enough to bring some outer bands into the Bahamas. We got Bermuda way over here, the southeast coastline. And let's go on and show you what everybody wants to see. Watch as we get into next Wednesday. So a week from today. Yes, we're going to be tracking this for another week at least, guys. And look how close this gets. It actually scrapes the outer banks of North Carolina. In fact, let's get a little bit closer. Look at this. This is next Thursday morning, a week from today, 952 millibar low. That's a major hurricane. I mean, it's even impacting the Outer Banks. If this was what actually verified, and I'm not saying this is what exactly is going to happen, this is one model run. And I'm going to talk about why it made such a substantial jump west when we speak on the steering currents of the model run. Guys, if I slur any words, I'm exhausted. I'm having to dig deep with this video, so this is probably not going to be as crisp as other videos. So if you're a new subscriber and you're like, dude, what is this dude even saying? I'm just wore out. So that's why. But anyways, 952 millibar low, and then this thing jets off to the northeast. And, here's how close it gets to the northeast. I mean, in southern New England, it doesn't impact really. It's going to bring some crazy swells, big waves for sure. If you're a surfer, you're all about this, but just a regular run-of-the-mill swimmer out here trying to enjoy some beach waters, it's definitely not going to be a safe day at the beach across the, I would say it's not going to be a safe several-day period next week along the beaches of the eastern U.S., that's for sure, with this just, bringing up such strong swells and strong, and just big time waves. Let's leave it at that because I can't talk right. But this continues to move forward here, and we look at Atlantic Canada. Not going to leave you guys hanging. It actually gets close enough to Nova Scotia where it brings some rain to you guys. Not a forecast. And this actually heavily impacts southeast Newfoundland. If there's anywhere in Atlantic Canada that you really, really want to watch out with this system, it is certainly the Avalon Peninsula, southeast Newfoundland. And the Euro has the really nasty part of this tropical system. And this is probably losing some tropical characteristics at this point, but still bringing a huge wind field, if this is the way it verified, right into southeast Newfoundland. And this would bring some big time impacts if this is the way it plays out. So we're definitely going to continue to watch it for you guys. Now, the GFS, it strengthens it much faster. So already a 972. For example, this is 20 millibars lower than the Euro. Is initiating. So this is starting off as like a category 2 hurricane right out the gate for Saturday morning. So of course we move this in time, and really doesn't. It looks like it gets maybe close enough to the northern Leeward Islands to bring some rain showers, maybe some gusty winds, breezy conditions, but no significant impact. So we continue to move this into, say, Monday morning. And next Monday morning, August the 18th, this becomes a major hurricane, but you can already tell it's gaining some latitude faster than, say, the Euro. So this is next Tuesday. We got a 943 millibar low right between the Bahamas, Bermuda, and the southeast coastline. So Bermuda's this little speck here. We got the Bahamas here, Turks Caicos Island, southeast coastline, and this is a powerful hurricane, stronger than the Euro, and it makes it closer past Bermuda than, say, the southeast coastline. The Euro has this thing way over here, big difference. One thing I'll mention here is this is like the 3-run trend from the GFS. So this is the run right now. This is the run earlier. This is the run this morning. So it has ticked west. But I said this yesterday. I'm sorry, I said this morning on Twitter or X, whatever they call it these days. It's hard to call a 2-run thing a trend. I want to see consecutive runs from different models, right? So we got to see what the GFS does in the next run, which is here in the next couple hours and then tomorrow morning. If it continues to tick west and the euro sort of stays still, then we might have a legitimate thing we need to worry about. But the GFS misses everybody, and then it heads northeast, and it doesn't, I mean, it gets somewhat close. One thing with the GFS is it's just faster. So, it does clip the Avalon Peninsula, southeast Newfoundland, and it kind of gets pulled up by the trough. And man, look how deep this low pressure is. This is certainly a post-tropical system at this point, but man, this thing is ripping. 935, massive cyclone up here. So, one thing I haven't showed you yet is the hurricane models, and I feel comfortable doing this now. And listen, the hurricane models can really overdo these systems, but sometimes they are dead on. So the HFA model, and we'll look at the HFB model. Hopefully you can see it pretty well on your screen. This is a 962 millibar low. I want to show you guys how close this gets to some areas. So we're starting off Saturday morning. I mean, that is a powerful, powerful hurricane just north of the British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and the Northern Leeward Islands here. And look how it almost goes due west. And guys, that's dangerously close to some of the greater Antilles Islands. This is Sunday afternoon, and this thing deepens to a 930 millibar low. One would argue that's getting close to high-end Cat 4 status, low-end Category 5. And sure enough, the Turks Caicos Islands are here, and this is close enough to definitely bring impact. So the hurricane models are obviously stronger, and man, they are wanting to cruise this way too far west. In fact, in the last panel here, which goes all the way out to next Monday evening, it's still not curving much yet. Something to watch. HFB model. Same thing, guys. I mean, this thing just, looks like it's a hair north than the HFA model. HFB model, though, is same thing. It rapidly intensifies this system, and it's just a little bit further north. But it's still pretty south. So, what about the ensemble guidance? This is the Euro ensemble, makes up 51 members. And you can tell, and I'm going to compare this one with yesterday afternoon's, okay? And you're going to see a bunch of L's on your screen. Just remember, there's not 51 low pressures. This is just throws all the members on the output for us. And you can tell most of these members kind of go between the East Coast, coastline, and Bermuda. And some of them are getting awfully close. There's like a distinct cutoff of the members right in here across sort of, the Turks, Caicos, and Bahamas. And then there's a lot of members. Once you get east of that, nothing once you get west of that. But, I mean, look, this thing, some of these members look like they're heading right towards the Carolina coastline, and then they dramatically hook. But some of these a few of them are making landfall. And some of them get close enough to where they bring impacts. And here's the thing, guys, and a couple people made a really good point about this. If this thing is even a few hundred miles off the coastline, it doesn't make it a direct landfall in, say, the Outer Banks. If it's a major hurricane, it's going to bring a lot of beach erosion to the Outer Banks, and it's going to cause issues. Listen, the Outer Banks are probably one major category hurricane landfall away from just being underwater. I've been out there to the Outer Banks before, and it's just going to take one really bad storm, and I think that it could potentially wipe the Outer Banks out. I'm not trying to promote fear or anything like that, but it is definitely something to think of. I think Charleston is a city that if they were hit the wrong way, I really think it would devastate them. Kind of like what happened with New Orleans 2005 with the Katrina, except a little bit different. Obviously, there's no dam situation in Charleston, but chit chatting there. But most of these members do curve dramatically. Still, why does this system take off? And why could I believe, say, the peak intensity being shown by the HFB or HFA model? Well, I want you to watch what happens here, right? So this is the upper wind pattern. All right, so these are winds at about 40,000 feet up in the air. So, what we look for with this is, is there any kind of wind shear? What kind of upper wind flow is this system working with? Is there a lot of winds being dispersed aloft on top of the system? So if we start this tomorrow morning, one thing you'll notice here, let's get this in motion. System is right here, spinning like this, cyclonically. We got some flow working against the system here. Just tells me this thing's probably dealing with a little bit of wind shear right into here. So a little bit drier, probably getting involved. And, we're getting some flow getting expanded out from the top of the system right into here. So this system's probably moist on one side, but probably dealing with some dry air. But, in general, this doesn't favor it's not a terrible upper wind pattern, but it's not as good as it's about to get. So if we continue to move forward here, and I want you to watch as that number begins to deepen pretty fast. So we get right here. Okay. This thing is starting to rapidly intensify as we're getting into Friday night. If this is correct, you can tell in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the flow begins to slow down because there's not really a distinct strong ridge influence with this system, because I do think some sort of trough is digging down and weakening the ridge on top of the system. So the steering kind of slows down. Therefore, the upper wind flow begins to steer down, begins to slow down. This allows this system to sort of, in a way, create its own environment, expand a lot of air out away from the center portion of the storm. So, you can see these arrows, how, they're extending this way. This is extending over here. It gets kind of weird over here. But air is being dispersed out away from the system. Okay? And you can tell. You see a little blue around the system? That's its own wind flow it's creating, because at this point, it's such a strong hurricane, 968. I mean, that's borderline major hurricane. So the flow is the storm is so tall at this point that it's even affecting the upper level flow and making it cyclonic, if that makes sense. So when you see blue around the actual storm, you might think, oh, well, this thing's dealing with some wind shear. It's not. I mean, that's its own flow it's creating. So this thing just turns into a living, breathing machine. And as we continue to move forward here, I mean, the system really takes off right here. I mean, this thing just becomes powerful, and just a lot of air being expanded out away from the system. I mean, you can see it here. It's a little weird right in here, but I mean, it's rapidly flowing out away from the system right here. And right here, it's flowing out. So this thing's just taking off, right? So when air is being dispersed out away from the system so much, this allows for more air to rise, right? So then that air on top of the system gets dispersed outward, and then more air rises. It's just a continuous cycle of rising air through the middle portion of this storm. Therefore, rising air, we know, if you don't, I'm about to tell you, leads to shower and storm activity, convection. Convection, shower and storm activity, creates a moist environment, right? When it rains outside, when it storms, it's moist, it's wet. Same thing with the tropical system. So therefore, this system develops a very moist environment around the heart and soul of the system, which is that low level circulation. So it's able just to create a tight mid-level circulation, which is convection around the low-level circulation. So therefore, it probably develops some sort of crazy eye. That's why I think this hurricane is going to be real eye candy on satellite here in the coming days. It has all the makings of it. And sure enough, if you look at this, which I didn't realize this is the HF, we're going to have to, let's look at this. So here's an example of this, okay? So remember how I was showing you that and let's make sure this matches up well. Yeah. So if you look right here, a lot of air being expanded out away from the storm right here, right? That matches up pretty well with, if you look at the moist air of this system. Man, I'm sorry about all the back and forth. If you look how much moist air is out in front of the system, it's because there's a lot of air being dispersed out away. And on the, on the eastern side of the system, it's dealing with a little bit of shear. So you see some dry air getting entrained into the circulation. But as soon as that upper wind pattern improves, it's exactly what I'm talking about. Look how much moist air gets involved with this system. Now, models have showed this a lot since, I would say, for about a week. I do think there's a possibility as this gets north of, this is something I've been watching. As this thing gets north of the British Virgin Islands, north of the Leeward Islands, I think there's a possibility there's some weakening with this system. A little bit of dry air, a little bit of flow working against this system here might allow this thing to weaken somewhat. Okay, but on model guidance, it does not show much weakening. It just shows this thing being incredibly cocooned, and you can see how a little bit of that moist air on this side of the system kind of gets eaten up, but then it recovers well and then explodes to category 4 or 5 status. So I am watching right here, and the reason that would be a big deal is because if this system isn't already well put together at this point, then that would create a scenario where this system could drift a little bit further west because it's a weaker system and it would be steered more by a lower level wind flow, which is obviously going to bring it a little bit more east to west. That is something to watch. I've been seeing it in models for a while. A little bit of dry air interfering with this system right into here. That's just something that keeps showing up, and it's showing up on the hurricane models too. But the upper wind pattern is going to be fantastic in this area. It just might enter a day or two, but we got to watch, and that could impact where it goes. But the sea surface temperatures, guys, it's very, very warm, well above average for this time of the year, any time of the year, but 29, 30 degrees Celsius. You convert that to, say, Fahrenheit, that's mid, upper 80s. So, I mean, it is plenty warm in the Southwest Atlantic. Last thing we'll talk about, this definitely is it's a fun topic, but it can be a little bit difficult to explain, so I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can. So the warmer colors you see on your screen, like the yellows and the orange, the reds, that's high pressure. It's a ridge, right? And the more muted these warmer colors are, like in the yellows and stuff, the weaker the ridge, but it's still a ridge. It's still there. The blue colors you see, the cooler colors, that's low pressure. Of course, we got the low pressure of Erin itself, which is a low pressure. We got this trough here. We got a trough up here. So basically the flow around high pressure goes like this. Okay, so it's kind of going like that. Then it kind of goes like this, like that. And then, you would have some flow right into here, this, that, and the other. Okay, so that is why Erin, which is the area I just circled, is moving east to west. It's following the bottom flank of that ridge. So now that you kind of know how the flow works around ridge, this thing's going to just continue to la-di-la-di-la, continue to move. What happens as we get into right here, you see this blue area that shows up? That is a trough that develops. And what I think happens here as we're getting into the beginning of the weekend, this trough develops here, kind of comes down to here, and sort of weakens our ridge right here. And that's why you see some of the yellow colors here begin to disappear. It almost kind of whiplashes the ridge. So it weakens, and you have kind of a wide open weakness created by this trough digging down. So all of a sudden you're not seeing much yellow in this area, and this thing's just chilling in a bunch of white. And that is why I think this system probably takes off here, because there's not a lot of flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, probably not a lot of wind shear, even though we're watching this time frame too at the same time for maybe a little flow working against it. But at this point, there's not a lot pushing it one way or the other. So it being a stronger storm system, it immediately feels this weakness. And there is still some light ridging right in here steering it. And it's going to begin to head north. But watch what happens here. Trough is right there. And then that trough sort of heads on out. So it's heading on out, moving on out the way. And then this ridge, watch how it builds back on top of the system. So Erin thinks, okay, well, I'm about to head north. And right when it tries to head north, ridging begins to build back on top of it. And you actually have a connection between the lower 48 ridge and the Atlantic ridge. So this tries to build on top of it. So the escape route is closing. It's still there because I think some forward momentum. But, this thing, the flow around this ridge is going to try to push this system. Even though this is weak ridging here, it's going to try to prevent this from really just dramatically turning and going further out in the North Atlantic and curving out. So you keep this going here. And that's why this begins to scoot closer to the southeast coastline, because the flow right here is working against it, not allowing for it to go. Another thing you watch here is you see this trough right here that tries to dig down. It sort of misses this trough initially. One thing that was showing up right here, say a couple runs ago, let's go right here. You see how this is further east, and then this Atlantic trough here, well, Eastern Canadian trough right here is kind of just stronger. It's positioned better to sort of pick this up. Now, if you look at the current run, it's kind of retracted back up into Canada more. And you got more ridging right here. So that's another thing. Another thing I'm watching, someone made a good point, a guy named Matthew. See this little dip right here? That is a little trough that could be flexing this ridge a little bit right here. Man, there's a lot that goes into this. But in general, to really knock this down at an easier level, we'll back it up here. Weakness created. This weakness allows us to turn north. Ridge builds back on it. Doesn't allow this to fully turn quickly. And then by the time, a weakness is fully created by this next trough digging down, it can scoop it up, but it's just too late. At this point, this brings some impacts to the East Coast, just never makes a direct landfall. But you can see how this trough picks this up and then slings it back out. So, hope that makes sense, guys. Oof. All right, I'm done. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful night, and we'll do it all again tomorrow morning. Talk soon.